It's the 5 of 9 cast, episode 3. Welcome back to the official podcast of Warwickshire's new and young Masons Club. For those of you who have joined us from the start, welcome back. And to those just discovering us, where have you been? Wherever you are in your 5 of 9 cast listening journey, it's great to be with you, wherever and however you're listening. As always, I'm joined by my two best brethren, Richard and Sean. How are we, guys?
Very good, thank you, James.
Not bad at all, James, thanks. Yourself?
Yeah, doing pretty well. It's not as warm as the last episode when we had the hottest day of the year. Welcome back, Sean. I know you couldn't join us last time.
Thank you very much.
Everything sorted from I think it was your vehicle, wasn't it, that broke down last time?
Yes, I had small car issues, but that's all sorted.
In each episode, we're looking at Freemasonry from a different angle. So far, we've spoken about the process of joining, and last episode, we spoke to an amazing female Freemason about her journey. The feedback so far has been overwhelming. Thank you so much. This time, we're exploring the more social aspect of Freemasonry through sport. Firstly, though, let's catch up on what we've all been doing since the last episode. Richard, Sean, what have you been up to?
I've been doing my daily advancement in Masonic knowledge. I think we spoke about this at the last podcast.
You bought some books last time, I think.
Did, and I have been reading them. They're very interesting. The Graham Redmond one, the Emulation Workings Today, and the Lodge of Emulation, I think it's called, the two different books. And there's been some real interesting ones in there. I think we were talking just a minute ago about it. So the things that I was learning was about things like with the obligations. So do you, as the deacons, put your wands down before or after sealing it?
I always was taught to put it down afterwards, but you're looking at me as if to suggest I may be mistaken. Sure, what was your understanding?
As a fun fact, I've never been invested as a deacon in a lodge. I've acted as it, but I have never actually been invested as a deacon.
I'm intrigued to know now, Richard. What's the answer?
Well, I'm the same as you. I was always told it must be after the Bible, but apparently, according to the book, it says before.
Fascinating. I never heard that before. So all those traditions we've been taught, are we saying they are deliberate mistakes?
At what point does a tradition become a mistake or a mistake become a tradition? That'd be an interesting, maybe another one for another podcast at some point. But I know I think the Graham Redmond is doing a Solomon Zoom, I think, next month.
Plug, if you haven't checked Solomon out, solomon.ugle.org.
Absolutely worth it.
Yeah, I think it's September. I think it is all going to be about traditions and how it all works. And I think there's something in the book that I quite liked where it said all lodges, I think, can do sort of as they please, but then it sort of had a little strap line that it's not quite Lodge of Emulation. It's like, okay then.
So you can do as you wish.
But it's not right.
You're not quite as good as us.
It's not emulation.
And what about you, Sean? What have you been up to?
Not a huge man. I've been to the Mark barbecue. I think I've been to a Mark meeting recently, and I've just been getting stuff ready for the new season as Secretary of Collegiate.
The Mark barbecue, I think, from what I understand, has this yearly feud between the Craft and the Mark over a game of bowls, I believe.
It's Skittles, and the Royal Arch are involved as well. Unfortunately, the Mark and the Craft team are both full, so I bowled the terms in Skittles for Royal Arch, and we got absolutely whooped.
We both did, yeah. I think that's maybe why we lost.
Yes.
I was going to come to the Mark barbecue, actually, and I ended up getting caught up in something the afternoon. And did I understand it right that the Mark won the trophy back from the Craft?
I think they did, yeah.
Yes, they did.
I think Right Worshipful Brother Phil Wills might have been quite happy at that.
Right Worship Brother Philip Wills was extremely happy about that, yes.
So what I've been up to since we last got together is, as I said before, I was appointed a visiting officer recently, and in the interim, while I've had no Masonic meetings to go to, I've just started the process of emailing the lodges that I've been allocated, introducing myself and trying to get a steer on what their available dates are going to be for me to come and do my first unofficial visit. I have to say I've got a little bit more information than I had last time, but I think it will still be somewhat daunting having to go in as the official representative of the province to those meetings. But if what I've seen from those that have gone before and other visiting officers is anything to go by, I think it'll be fun.
We're not on your list, are we? We've just lost our visiting officer.
I don't believe you are, no. I think I've got Round Table, I want to say Alliance Lodge, and two others which escape me. And if you're one of them and you're listening to this, I'm really sorry. I just don't have it in front of me at this moment in time. Okay, so that's what we've been up to. It's great to hear that we're putting the Masonic break to good use in our own ways. I have to say, the rugby team promises to be an insightful look into a very different aspect of the craft that some may not have considered, including those of you listening who, perhaps at the moment, aren't Freemasons, but we know you want to be. But as always, let's start with the latest Warwickshire Masonic news with Sean.
Here is the latest news in and around Warwickshire. Have you served in the armed forces? If so, the province is currently exploring the founding of a lodge for ex-military personnel. The lodge will have a strong, social and charitable emphasis and is intended to be a working lodge to attract and initiate candidates. Whether you're already a Freemason or interested in becoming one, this lodge may be for you. We know the strong sense of camaraderie and togetherness that comes from military service is why many ex-service personnel choose to join Freemasonry. If this is something that interests you, follow the link in the show notes to register your interest. It's not every day that one gets the chance to be part of the Queen's Baton Relay ahead of the Commonwealth Games. Well, on Tuesday the 26th of July, Worshipful Brother Ronald Emerson got just that opportunity to carry the baton through a part of Birmingham on its way to the Alexander Stadium for the opening ceremony. Congratulations to Worshipful Brother Ronald from all of us in the 5 of 9 Club. On Thursday the 7th of July, a total of 7 brethren and their wives entertained representatives of 24 local charities at a luncheon held at the Tally-Ho Social Club in Birmingham. The occasion was to congratulate them on their hard work and commitment that they continue to show their individual charities through the ever-increasingly difficult times of fundraising following the pandemic. The highlight of the afternoon was the presentation of cheques to those charity representatives present and the Provincial Grand Master's address when he said, Warwickshire Freemasons realised that COVID-19 had and continues to have a huge impact on the ability of local charities to raise funds. We are also aware that you have found imaginative ways to continue to deliver your valuable services on restricted resources. Warwickshire Freemasons are proud to play a small part in the fantastic work you all do, often in very difficult and stressful situations. Every charity here today, and many others, has received a donation from the Warwickshire Masonic Charitable Association. This month, how about cycling all the way from Birmingham to Paris? That is exactly what Brother Roy and his son Guy will be doing later this year. After previously rowing the Atlantic, Roy and Guy will be hitting the pedals on the 460-kilometre journey over a 4-day period, all in support of the Royal British Legion in the run-up to Remembrance Sunday and Armistice Day. We can't imagine the endurance needed for this exceptional effort, but we know it's for a good cause. Listeners can donate at the link in the show notes. And finally, one of our own events. On Saturday, the 27th of August, the 5 of 9 Club is hosting our next social event, and it's a double trouble. Early afternoon, we have a quad biking session at Bassett's Pole. Experience the thrill of hurtling through the countryside on the quad bike and having a laugh with other club members. In the evening, we are headed to a local curry house in Sutton Coldfield for a curry. Members can come to the whole day or just to one of the 2 activities. So if you can't make the quad biking, we would still love to see you at the curry night. Full details on the events page of our website at 5of9club.org.uk. And that's all the Warwickshire Masonic news. James.
Did you know there are a variety of Masonic sporting associations across the United Grand Lodge of England? In Warwickshire, we have our very own rugby team. Brother Rab Cooper and Worshipful Brother Stuart Jenkins, welcome brethren. Tell us what it's all about.
Welcome.
Hello. Good evening.
So starting with you, Stuart, what attracted you into Freemasonry?
Well, I was interested, not having recently left the TA. I was kind of missing the companionship of the guys that I was serving with. My TA unit was a few miles from home and not much excuses to go over there. So I explored Freemasonry. Originally, I looked at my old boys' lodge, which is Shenstonian Lodge, but I bumped into an old friend that very afternoon and he said, "What are you doing here?" So I told him I'd been exploring Freemasonry and he said, "I didn't realise you wanted to be a Freemason, Stuart. Why don't you join my lodge?" I'd only known him 15 years and didn't know he was a Mason. But here I am, 29 years later, still a member of Forest of Arden.
It's always surprising when we find these things out.
Indeed.
Rab, what about you?
Well, I think that just like most people, it was a fairly long path that led me to Freemasonry. But if I was going to put a definitive point, it would be when I became a father a few years ago to my son, John, who will be 8 in 2 months' time. And I started trying to think more deeply about the type of person I was. And as I was more soul searching of what the type of person that I believed in, these values, At the same time, I was becoming increasingly closer with my wife's granddad, worshipful brother Peter Reid, who fortunately has since passed the Grand Lodge above. But he's someone that over the years, doing our visits to him in Cornwall, came increasingly closer and closer to him. The more and more I admired him as a person. And through our conversations, the two principles that he said that led him to how he conducted his life was, first, he had a very strong faith. And secondly, was Masonic values that he had learned over, well, I think he was 67 years in the craft before he finally passed. But all of our different values, like charity, patience, integrity, and not just would just say these values, he would give me real world examples of how he'd applied them in his life. And this just created a spark in me that just increased my interest in it. As someone who is quite idealistic, a bit of a romantic, these are the type of values that was sparking the interest. So I started doing my own research into the craft, looking at the websites and whatnot, and it became a checklist almost of, I agree with that, I like that, I like the sound of brotherhood, I love the sound of charity, plus the bit giving help and avenues to raise money and help with my community. And then the final straw for me, being a bit of a history buff, was finding out as Freemasonry really annoyed the Nazis. And that was the final straw for me. So it was yep, sign me up. And 5 years later, here we are now.
Yeah, I love that story. I think when we had Sean, when we had Worshipful Brother Howard on, he was talking, but we've had quite a lot of people coming in, of gentlemen who are looking for that next sort of stage of something else. Something else. I think the same with like you, Stuart, isn't it? You'd finish the TA and you're now looking for something else. But as we're here to talk about sport, and more importantly, rugby, Stuart, can you tell us your personal connections with rugby and how it all started for you?
It all started aged 8 at Solihull School, where one was forced into playing rugby. Didn't particularly enjoy it at that stage. There were a number of occasions where the ball landed in my arms and I headed in what I deemed to be the right direction, and then somebody would mallet me from behind. But gradually over the years, I grew to love it as a sport, and I have developed an equal loathing for the round ball game. I played a limited amount of rugby when I was serving as a junior leader in the 1970s. I played again for my TA regiment, again only briefly. I remember taking one for the team that day. I got myself a red card just to stop another player who was too good for us. And then when my son started to show an interest when he was sort of 10 or 11, took him to local rugby club. And the question was then asked, would anybody like to go on a coach's course? And Luke, my son, responded, yes, my dad would love to do that. So I did the coach's course, level 1 and level 2. And then I kept hearing the question on a Sunday morning at the rugby club, who's going to referee this game then? So I took it on myself to do the referees course with the North Midlands Society of Rugby Football Referees and became a referee, and spent the next 15 to 18 years running around on a Saturday afternoon and a Sunday morning, blowing a whistle and having a high old time, enjoying the game of rugby from the centre. I was very lucky that for a 4-season period, I found myself sitting in the technical zone at Worcester Warriors as the club's official, holding up the board with the numbers for changing people over and supervising professional rugby players who'd been sat in the sin bin, making sure the timing was right and they could go back on after their 10 minutes of purdah. And I've loved every minute of it. And then I heard that the province was having a rugby club of its own, and I thought, I'm going to have a part of that. So here I am today.
Awesome. I think my only one rugby memory at school was, I think I was about 5'8" at the time, and this lad was probably about 6'2". And there was no way I was taking him out, so I just pushed him out. He wasn't very happy. He pushed him out of the touchline. He wasn't very happy that I did that. I'm not sure if that's legal or not, but that's how it went down.
Shoulder to shoulder, you'd probably get away with it.
Rab, how about you? What's your rugby story?
Bit different to Stuart. I was very much a late comer to rugby. I went to a state school and it was a football school. I can only recall 2, maybe 3 at most rugby lessons in 7 years I spent in the high school. I was a Wolves fan. Football was my main sport till I left, and I went to University of Swansea. Met a lot of fellow Welshes. Slowly but surely, they converted me to a properly shaped ball game. But even though when I lived in Swansea, I still didn't have the confidence enough to play it then, until it's when I moved back to England. And the final straw for me there was the 2011 World Cup, and I absolutely, utterly fell head over heels with the whole part of the game. Everything from the powerhouse of a scrum to the technical abilities of line out, silky skills, hard hitting. It didn't matter whether it was Wales versus England, or I was watching Samoa versus Fiji or Namibia versus South Africa. It just didn't matter. I became really obsessed with the sport, and eventually my now wife convinced me maybe partly to give her an afternoon off of me talking about rugby. Oh, will you just go and give it a go if you really want to do so? And maybe she was a bit surprised by my reaction, but said, yeah, okay then, that sounds no problem. So bless her, she took me along to the local rugby club, and she said I was wide-eyed and looked like I was being dropped off to big school on my first day. And I've just been going on from there. I rocked up saying, I'm a winger, I'm fast. They took one look at me and went, nope, you're a forward, and I've not left the pack since.
Not for the want of trying.
Not for the want of trying. I've helped set up my own rugby club. I'm still not allowed to be in the backs. Other than playing, similar with Stuart, I followed path into refereeing, and I think we knew each other, didn't we, for the refereeing society before we knew each other
Certainly did.
As Masons. And yeah, I've had a lot of fun with refereeing. Low times as well, but a huge amount of highs, including the refereeing the varsity game in front of just over 2,000 people, which was terrifying but absolutely thrilling experience as well. So I've been on both sides of the coin. I love playing, I love refereeing, and now we're enjoying helping run a club for others to do the same, hopefully.
To throw this question open to both of you, it's probably going to be very similar answers. Where did the idea of a rugby club come from?
Well, I think the culture of rugby and Freemasonry, there's a lot of overlap in similar values of fair play. Rugby community and culture is very big on charity fundraising as well. But it's a lot about teamwork and integrity and standing up for yourself and for your teammates. So I think there is a lot of overlap between the two as well. For myself, the initial idea is stemming from one of probably my joint favourite thing about Freemasonry is going to visit other lodges. And through doing that, I met a lot of current and former rugby players who are also Masons as well. And I suppose the idea just started germinating in the back of my mind and wondering if it was a viable idea in the long term. And eventually, when the first lockdown started, me and brother Ed Moore were doing a charity walk, the equivalent from Warwickshire Grand Lodge to Great Queen Street and back, which is equivalent to about 250 miles. And I walked around and around my garden over 30 days and I left a lovely burnt track. But after that, me and Ed were still talking, well, what do we do next? And Ed is also a massive rugby player physically, as well as loves the sport as well. And we thought, well, Ed had met a couple of rugby Masons, and I had as well. And we thought, well, why don't we just throw it out there, see what sticks? I think James Key was next chap that we spoke to. He liked the idea. He introduced his friend JJ, and JJ introduced it, and it kept snowballing from there. People getting involved, people getting excited. Maybe it was a bit of lockdown madness, I think, for people to focus on. But the idea kept getting bigger and bigger, seemed more and more viable. We were getting more support from province. We were giving the AOK to go for it, and then it just kept going and going until we're here today recording this podcast.
Also, what about challenges? Do you have any challenges setting it up?
Yeah, the first challenge would probably be the fact that we couldn't train or we couldn't play because we were in lockdown. So we built a fairly firm social network between the potential players. I was quite unfortunate in a way. I'm a little bit too old to play, so I was never going to be a player. So I was very pleased to take on a committee role as treasurer to start off with. But the main challenge was that. And then we found that as lockdown opened up and we were allowed to play with the limited laws that were in place at that time, I think it probably became difficult to arrange fixtures. And during the first year, that sort of continued. But we managed to get a really good set of fixtures for the upcoming season now. So it really has taken off in a massive way.
Okay, so it's time for us to take a short break. In our first 2 episodes, we spoke about the important work of the Warwickshire 2023 Festival, and we encourage you all to donate if you can. This time, however, we're discussing something built by Freemasons for Freemasons in the 21st century. Richard.
Have you ever found yourself at a loose end on evening? Wife or husband out? Perhaps you're visiting another town or province with work and don't fancy spending every evening in a bland hotel room. Find My Lodge is an amazing app available for iOS and Android, bringing the full UGLE Masonic calendar to the palm of your hand. Find My Lodge allows you to select a province and date range and see a list of all upcoming meetings over that period. Even better,
you can get the Secretary's contact information direct from the app. The app not only covers the craft, but also allows users to search for the Holy Royal Arch meetings too. The simple-to-use interface supports quickly searching for meetings in your own province and beyond. Lodges can even upload the upcoming ceremonies they have, so you can see what to expect in advance. The best part of Find My Lodge is that it's totally free, built by Freemasons for Freemasons. Find My Lodge is the best way to find that meeting to fill that empty evening and meet some new brethren in the process. You can download Find My Lodge for free from your smartphone's app store today. Side note, we can't be held responsible for sudden urges to join new lodges or chapters and having to explain that to your partner. Okay, let's get back to the show. James.
Okay, so we are back with Brother Rab Cooper and Worship Brother Stuart Jenkins. Welcome back from the break, brethren. I want to just go into a little bit more about the purpose of setting up the rugby club. So you've spoken about the rugby connection that you all have and going to other lodges and discovering rugby players. Do you see any other purposes or advantages to the club in terms of bringing people together or charitable works or anything along those lines?
Certainly, James, we do have a very good record in terms of charity. Over the last year, we've raised quite a lot of money for various charities. I'm pretty sure Rab will know better figures than I will. But I think that being one of the central tenets of Freemasonry, the fact that we've been able to be and been as successful as we have, just shaking an ice bucket or a pint glass at the end of a match, it's been really, really gratifying to see that people have been so generous.
Yes, in over our first 8 games of our first year, we raised just over £4,600 spread across 7 different charities, twice for the 2023 festival, but a wide range of other charities, including Birmingham Children's Hospital, SAFA, Macmillan Nurses, and others. So that was highly satisfying. Oh, and almost £800 for Movember. Quite a collection of horrific facial hair, which will...
I've done Movember, yeah, I know.
I think you actually sponsored me, didn't you? Thanks, Rich.
Is there a success that stands out? Is there something really special in your mind with all the charity work that you've done that you'd really want to tell us about?
Personally, I am amazed by the generosity of everyone who has contributed to all the charity endeavours that we've done on all of the games. And I also would like to point out and thank as well, it's not just us, the Masons, team players and fans who contribute. Whichever team we're playing with, they've always been, not one club has been anything less than highly generous in either their players or their fans as well, contributing to the charity bucket. In terms of our most successful individual effort, we raised just over £1,700 with Sutton Coldfield Rugby Club to go towards the family of Jack Jeffries, a lad who unfortunately suffered life-ending injuries in a rugby match in February. That was the biggest success. But I'm always just floored by the generosity from Masons and non-Masons, any and everybody within the rugby family. So if anyone here who's put their hand in their pocket in doing any of the games, can I just say on behalf of the club, thank you for each and every penny that you've kindly donated over the last year.
Picking up on a conversation we had during the break, what can you tell us about the links the club has to the William Webb Ellis Lodge, which is also based in Warwickshire?
The links with William Webb Ellis Lodge are absolutely crucial. We've formed a very close working relationship with them, which hopefully will continue well into the future. And I do know a goodly number of the club members are intending to become joining members of the lodge. The lodge is looking at the way that it's been run in common with an awful lot of other lodges. And I think some of the input that they're receiving from the club is going to help them a great deal. And it'll help us, because it gives us an excuse to go to another couple of meetings a year, which is, of course, very important.
I think probably one of the most important part of the feedback in part of our relationship with William Webb Ellis is that they will be hoping they're going to be changing to a peripatetic lodge. So they will be they'll be conducting their meetings at different lodge buildings. Particularly, we'll be looking to have their meetings in line with our game. So ideally, we'll have a meeting with William Webb Ellis in the morning at whichever is the nearest Masonic centre with our game, and then we'll have a quick lunch and then move on and have our game against whoever we are on that day.
Please keep us updated about that. If anyone hasn't been to the William Webb Ellis Lodge, it is definitely worth a visit. It's a very unique lodge with the way they do one or two things, which is very, very special. And I'm hoping their next meeting will be a 5 of 9 event.
So, Rab, I just wanted to ask you a question about recruitment, if I may. So you mentioned a few minutes ago that you found a lot of people joining the rugby club who were members of the William Webb Ellis Lodge, or you had recruited people onto the rugby club from other lodges because they had an interest in the game. Thinking about it from the other angle, though, have you found it useful, or has it helped to recruit people who are not Freemasons but who are interested in rugby to think about becoming a Mason?
Yes, say that categorically, because within our year and a bit of going, we've had 3 chaps who have since become Mason. Well, strictly speaking, one has been initiated and the other 2 are just waiting for the upcoming Masonic year to start, and then they will have their initiations when they can fit into it. They're as good as Masons as they are. From the recruitment side, apart from, yes, it has been successful, I think it's just as important from the club's point of view is that we are also promoting Freemasonry in a informal, easier to access method. So even if we don't necessarily convince someone to make the final step and become a Freemason, hopefully that we are bringing down some of the barriers and allowing informal, easy environment that people, if they wish to ask us questions. They may want to become a Mason, they may already be thinking about it, or they may even be turned 180 and then go along the path. But I would also consider us breaking down those stereotypes and increasing awareness of Freemasonry and just showing that we are not, well, I'm not going to repeat all of the silly conspiracy theories, but just proving to people that what the fraternity, what the brotherhood is actually truly all about. The rugby family, as I say, there is a lot of overlap in our shared values, so we think it's a perfect vehicle to already show what we all know is and what we love about our brotherhood.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the strongest tools to bring people into Freemasonry is those light points of contact all the time, you know, and not having something so formal. It's just sort of letting people, I think, who was it? There was somebody telling us about a pub. Was it a pub meeting? And they went down to a pub. Was that Worshipful Brother Howard again? And I think he was saying that, you know, these guys end up bringing in 2 or 3 guys just by having a conversation with people in the pub. And I think it's really important that, you know, I think we as Freemasons do just talk about what it is that we're doing, because it is a good thing. And I think sometimes that can get lost by people. And I've had lots of conversations like you, Rab, about what people think about it and things. Although interestingly today, I did speak to a lady and she had no clue who the Freemasons were. Not a Scooby-Doo. Back to the rugby club. Where do you see its next stages? What's the future? Where do you think it's going next, or where would you guys like to see it go next?
I think, given the initial difficulty of finding fixtures, the fact that we've got, is it 8 fixtures booked for this year?
5 so far,
5 so far.
6, 90% there.
So the fact that it's been a little easier as the COVID has gone away from us a little, I think we're in a strong position now because we'll become better known. And, you know, the more different places that we play, the better it is, because there will always be a player from another team we're socialising at the end of the game, having a beer, and they'll say, well, what is all this Freemasonry malarkey then? And the more places we can get to, the more people we can have those conversations and hopefully attract people both to membership of the club and membership of Freemasonry in general.
When it comes from a recruitment and promotion point of view, I do think it's very important for Freemasonry, and I'm sure this is showing that we're more open to the public with marketing and podcasts and etc. But I think it's very important to keep the 360-degree view. Maybe in the past we've overly relied on people coming into the craft because their father or their grandfather or their uncle was a Mason, whereas nowadays we should be being out there, and the rugby club's a good example of having, like I say, that informal, easy to access events for people who don't have any connection with Freemasonry. I certainly didn't until I met my now wife, and as I said, I became very close to her grandfather, and that's what initiated the spark into Freemasonry. But until that moment, I had, as far as I was aware, I had no connection to Freemasonry. That absolutely wonderful organisation that I've loved every minute of, that would have been not accessible to me had I had not looked out with meeting my wife's granddad. So
I think I joined Freemasonry in 1993, and as I already said, my proposer I had known for 15 years without knowing he was a member, and almost nobody talks about Freemasonry. But in the 29 years I've been a member, I've become immensely proud of what Freemasonry represents. what it does for other people and what it does for me. I've made a strong effort to be very open about my Masonic membership with whomever I'm talking. But the rugby club is just a really lovely place to do it because, as I said before, you're having a beer and somebody will ask you questions. You know, if they're showing an interest without putting any pressure on them, then there's a possibility that they'll consider joining, and that's can only benefit the craft in general.
I think it's a nice moment in Freemason's history at the moment, the fact that we are actively trying to be more open and with the public. As my granddad said to me during one of our many conversations with it, the age-old stereotypes, like how you guys covered in your other podcast about the awkward question about women's Freemasonry. And then he just turned to me and said, would you be a member of an organisation that you're ashamed of? No. Are you ashamed of being a Mason? No. So talk about it. And thankfully for how this club has organically grown over the last 12, 18 months, I think it's been a wonderful avenue of either those who've recruited, who have fully come into the fraternity, or just as importantly, those who have left us and our games and whatnot, much more positive view of the brotherhood.
So if you're a former rugby player, or if like James, you're now really interested in starting to play the game of rugby, how would you go about joining the club?
We have a Facebook page, for starters, Warwickshire Masons Rugby Club, and we'll give you the contact points that you need to get in touch with members of the committee who can introduce you to a game and then talk to you more about Freemasonry if that's what you're interested in.
Awesome, brilliant, Stuart, thank you.
We are also have a Twitter at WMRFC and a website, www.WMRFC.com.
Which is where you can buy your stash.
Always got to plug the merch.
You're saying that those who may be new to the sport or feel that they're not able to cope with full contact rugby, following this season, we are starting a walking rugby team as well, which will be running parallel with our full contact team. And we are planning that we'll have a walking rugby match prior to the full contact match. And walking rugby, if you don't know what it is as it's called. But this allows those who might be brand new to the sport or coming back from injury or for whatever reason don't feel able or confident to play the full contact game. But it allows them to be 100% full part of the club. We'll be all on the side cheering them on because as far as we're concerned, as soon as you pull that bear onto your chest, you're a full member of the Warwickshire Masonic Rugby Club.
And as an old fella, I can't wait for that to happen.
Well, Brother Sean, I think there you go. Next season, you're in.
Can you play fly half? You're shoo-in then.
I am an absolutely hopeless rugby player. Unfortunately, I love watching it, and I'm very delighted, Stuart, you used to play for the Warriors or referee for the Warriors because that's who I support. But I am a hopeless player, unfortunately.
You'll fit in absolutely fine then.
Brother Rab, Brother Stuart, thank you so much for coming on to the 5 of 9 podcast, and we look forward to supporting you in one way or another in the future.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you very much.
So guys, I don't know about you, but I learned so much from that interview. How did you find it? What did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I loved the part about finishing each of the rugby games and then doing a whip round from everybody. I didn't realise that they did that, and that's one of their big funding sources.
No, it's really, really good. I'm loving the idea of a walking rugby club, and joking aside, I might have a look at that.
I think when you look at the age profile of Freemasonry typically, actually having a walking rugby club would even open it up to an even greater pool of people, either as Masons wanting to play rugby or used to play it and want to get back into it without the risk of injury, or people who are interested in rugby and maybe have always had that passion all through their lives, like we said, as a recruitment tool into Freemasonry. I also, like you said, Richard, love the piece about the amount of money they've collected for charity. I think, did Rab say it was about £4,000 to £5,000 over the last season?
It's an absolutely remarkable amount of money.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. So I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for leading the interview, guys. Superb job, as always. Thank you all for listening to this episode. We learned so much from our special guests, and we hope that you did too. Now, some of you have asked how you can support the podcast, and honestly, the best way is to give us that 5-star review on your selected podcast platform and recommend us to a brother or friend who hasn't listened before. Your support means the world. Don't forget, you can listen back to this and all episodes of 5 of 9 Cast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can tweet us at 5 of 9 Club or by using the hashtag 5 of 9 Cast. please do get in touch. We're on Facebook and Instagram, and you can visit our website at 5of9club.org.uk, where you can join our newsletter and be the first to hear about new episodes, upcoming social events, and submit your lodge news to us. Give us the news and we'll cover it here first. That's it. That's the 5 of 9 cast. We'll see you next time. Bye.